Right, so a lot of map animations are pretty boring and pretty straightforward, just a static image and like a quick zoom into them. Today I'm going to run through how you can bring your maps to life and create something like this. So yeah, that's what we're going to be breaking down today. Basically, giving your maps a bit of a story to them. I'm going to show you how to do this from start to finish. Before we jump in, all the project files, footage that I've used, anything else is going to be over on the Patreon. Obviously not necessary, but it's there if you want to have something to start off with. With that being said, let's jump into After Effects and get going with the basic map structure. So first things first is we're going to open up a new composition. I'm going to do a 1920 by 1080. We can call this main comp, and I'm going to have a 10 seconds and 25 frames a second. Just going to organize this by bringing it into my main folder here. I'm going to drag and drop in this 3D model here. On a previous Patreon video, I've shown how you can add in 3D models with all their textures. I'm not going to run through it here, but if you have a .obj file, it should just bring the textures in with them. So we have our globe in here now, and we can just call it that, and we're going to make this comp size. Let's just press OK. We have our globe in here. I will leave this globe in the description. It was fully free. It's on Sketchfab. The resolution of the textures is really high, so it just means that you can zoom in a lot closer into this map and yet retain the details. So we have our globe, and now we're going to bring in a camera. So let's just do that. So camera, scene 01 cam. Now we're gonna go to our end position on the area of the map where we want to finish, and then we're going to basically work back from there. So let's kind of rotate our globe and try to find where we want. Do something like this and come around. I'm going to zoom in to this island just here, and now what we can do is come over to our camera, and we're going to control this by basically using our position parameters here. So let's just zoom in a lot, and we can rotate this up like so. You're going to want the section that you want to zoom into just dead on in the center of your composition here. So something like this is going to be pretty good. We can adjust that later, but yeah, for now that's perfect. Come over to our camera and come into like 5 seconds. Let's just do a keyframe on our position and our point of interest. I'm just going to bring our point of interest keyframe back to the start. So now we can zoom out with our position keyframe on our camera, rotate this over here and kind of pan into that part. Kind of want to reveal the edges of the world here, of the globe. Yeah, you can just press play and just see how that's looking. That's looking pretty good. I'm just going to come up here a bit. I'm going to just drag this out a bit, and I'm just going to copy and paste that keyframe. And then we can just zoom straight up like this and something like this. So then basically we're going to be coming over, not as zoomed in. And then it's going to come in like that. Grand. Right, so we can leave that for now. Don't worry about it. And we're going to finesse that in a bit. Next thing we're going to do is just come over and we're going to add in some of these clouds here. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of these being added, but it's kind of the main thing in the whole composition that really helped the transition. So let's just call this cloud. Let's make this 3D. Press our P on our keyboard and just bring this up a bit. And we can drag on our timeline. And then let's just place this somewhere. So you can scale it down a lot. And we're going to just place this over our country here. And then you can just go from the start and just kind of see what's going on there. So you can kind of see there's a bit of depth being created, which is exactly what we need. So just to even this out a bit across the scene, we're just going to duplicate this, and then we can place some of these clouds in different positions. And you can just increase the scale. You can even bring down the opacity a bit on them. You can just rotate it a bit as well, so you can kind of see the look we're getting here. And yeah, let's duplicate that out again. Maybe let's place it somewhere down here. Lovely. Right, that's adding a lot of depth to our scene. Come back to our camera, and I'm going to just focus a bit more on this animation now. So it's going to come around here, and then we're going to zoom in from here. So let's just delete this back keyframe here, and I'm just going to highlight both of these, and I'm going to use a I'm going to use an ease here like so, and here is the value graph editor, and that's just going to start off a bit faster and then just a bit smoother as well. So now we have this, and now we're going to want to start zooming into these clouds. So in order to do that, I'm going to use the zoom on our camera here, and around here we're going to zoom in lots, so something like this. And now we want to ease these as well. So now it's coming in and we're getting something like this. And you can just space this out a bit if you want the zoom to feel a bit smoother like that. And that's looking pretty good. So we're going to just get this cloud and we're going to give it a different color. And we can duplicate it and then maybe rotate it as well. We can bring it down in size as well to something like 0.5. And just place it somewhere like that. And maybe duplicate it one more time and rotate it like that. So that's what we're getting, and that's going to work perfectly for us. Last thing we're going to do now on this scene one is just add in a light, and we're going to make a spotlight. This is going to make things look a bit more cinematic. We're going to place it in the middle of our composition, and then we can just have it something like this. So let's just see when this goes. Okay. So we're going to come into our settings, and we're going to make the cone angle a lot bigger, and we can zoom out a bit from this just to kind of light up more area. And you can always adjust this, so you can maybe, if you want it a bit stronger, you can increase the intensity. So we're kind of getting that nice fade off here on the left hand side of the globe. So now when you play this, perfect. I'm just going to add in a position keyframe, and then when we're here, we're going to want it to light this up a bit more. So something like this, and that's just going to help the transition. Perfect. Select all these, U, and then press U again, and we can just drag our comp to this area. Select all these, Control Shift D just to split them, delete that. Now we can just make this a pre-composition and call this scene 01. Now we're going to start building out the second scene. That's going to be our aerial shot of Pearl Harbor. So this is the image that I found, and obviously there's no color on it, but if you come into Photoshop now and let's just say you select an area that you want, something like that, you just give it a mask and select our image again. If you come up to filter, neural filters, you now have an option to colorize your old photos. Yeah, you can kind of dial this in. There's a lot of different presets, and you can kind of add colors here of what you would basically want. And yeah, this is what I was left with, and yeah, this is what we're going to use. So I'm going to drag and drop that into our scene, and let's just bring this up to something like this. We're going to position this a bit better, and we're going to just rotate it as well. And yeah, something like that is good. Now what we're going to do is just bring in a new camera. I'm going to do the same type of camera, but we can call this scene 02 cam. Bring it down underneath, drag it to the length here, and before we go any further, I'm going to change this render to classic rather than advanced. So we used the advanced for the scene 1 just because we had that OBJ in there. But for this, the reason why we're changing it to classic is that when we bring in our textures, we can use our blending options and stuff while you still have a 3D layer switched on. So happy days. So around here, we're going to give our camera a position keyframe. We can actually bring that to the start, and then we're going to zoom through here. So let's just do position, and let's just bring this up a lot just to see what's going on. We're going to add in a opacity keyframe on our scene 1 here, and then I'm going to bring the opacity fully down. So now we're going to have a transition like this, and that's already looking half decent, but we're going to layer this up a lot, so then it's going to look a lot nicer. So now we're getting something like that. This is just a bit too close in, so we can come back to our parallel and we can adjust the scale. Maybe something like this. I'm just going to ease this as well. So we want to start off fast and then we want to end slow. So it's going to go like that. Oh, yeah, and that's looking pretty good. That's going to work perfect. So we come through and then we're left with this. Just so we can get a full image here, you see these black bars on the side. Before we focus on the transition, let's just fix that. So what I'm going to do is cut out roughly around the island here. And obviously, if you had a bit more time, be a bit neater with how you're cutting this out. But I'm just going to do this for the tutorial. Right, so I have that fully cut out now. And what I can do is just duplicate that. And then on this bottom layer, I'm going to delete that mask. So now we're basically left with the exact same thing. But what we're going to do on this bottom layer, we're going to put in a CC repeat tile. And we can just drag this out on the left and on the right. Now we're just going to change this to checker flip H. And that's kind of blended that in perfectly like that. And the last thing we're going to do on this background is just add in a new solid. I'm just going to add in a black solid, bring it to the bottom, bring it in line with here, and then I'm just going to bring down the opacity on this. And yeah, you're getting this effect, and it kind of just makes you focus a lot more on that island, which is perfect. Now let's start building out these clouds and just make this transition look a lot nicer. So coming over to our project, let's get our cloud image again and bring it in here. I'm just going to make this 3D again, scale this down a lot, and then we're going to bring the position up a lot. So we're going to do something like this, and let's just bring it up even more, because the initial clouds, we're going to be flying through them pretty quick. That's working pretty nice. Maybe even more like this. And we can just rotate that a bit. And then we're just going to duplicate this. Let's just call it cloud. And then we can just rotate this a bit and bring it over here. And then maybe just put one more in the middle here. And on this one, the one that's in the middle, all I'm going to do is just give it a keyframe on the opacity. And then we're just going to bring this down a lot, just so it's not as jarring. So it's going to go bam. And we're kind of just coming straight through those clouds. Let's just select these and give them a different color. And now I'm just going to bring in our cloud PNG one last time. And we can give it another color. And you can just call this cloud island. Make it 3D. Scale it down a lot. On our position, bring it up a tiny bit like this, just so it's not fully on the floor of the island. We can just maybe adjust the scale a bit like this. So let's see how that's looking. Yeah, it's looking nice. Duplicate it and let's plant it around a few more times. Maybe bring it up in position, duplicate it, put it over here. Rotate it a bit, bring it down a bit, so then we're getting a lot more depth going on. Maybe duplicate it one last time, and we're just going to cover this part here. Let's rotate that, scale it up a lot. So all I'm going to do is just bring this up on the Z a bit, just to kind of give it a bit more depth off the ground and look like we're going through it. Right, so this is how it's all looking at the moment. We go in, zoom in, and yeah, that's what we're getting. Now we can add in those planes that are going overhead. For that, I used ChatGPT and it gave me something like this. Now, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but yeah, I just couldn't find an aerial shot of the planes. So yeah, this is what I used. So I cut that out and put it into a PSD. And this is what I have. So inside here, I basically just have the propeller and the plane on different layers. And on this propeller, we can just come up, set our anchor point by pressing Y on this propeller here. And then if we make this 3D, we can just rotate this. And yeah, it's kind of given the illusion that it's rotating. Give it a keyframe on our Y. And then we're just going to press 3 here just so it rotates 3 times. Something like that. Perfect. Let's bring it down to our scene 2 here. And we're just going to make sure that it's the same duration. And then we're going to make it 3D. Bring down the size a bit. And then bring it up on that Z axis a lot. And then we can just rotate this. And put it somewhere like that. Can even bring it up a bit and then scale it down again. Right, that's looking good. And now we can duplicate that plane, place it somewhere else. Can bring down the scale a tiny bit, maybe bring up the position as well. And then we just duplicate both of those, drag them to the top, and then just replace them somewhere like this. Just going to select all 4 of them and maybe just place them a bit more in the middle. And now what we can do is come over and give them all a null. And on that null, we're going to just press P and set a keyframe. And then here, we're going to have them move a tiny bit. So then we're getting something like that. And they're just slowly moving. Right, that's looking great. And we can now select all these, pre-compose them, and call this scene 02. Right, now it's time to add the finishing touches just to really bring this to life. You kind of have the bases of both scene 1 and scene 2 in there, but yeah, we can still make this look a lot nicer. What we're going to do is just maybe make that zoom a bit nicer by just tightening this up like that. And that'll just speed that up and make that transition a lot nicer. Let's start on scene 1, and we're just going to add in a few things here. We're going to just right click, new adjustment layer. We can call this blur, and let's just add in a fast box blur. Let's increase it a good bit. And then we're just going to get our mask tool and then do something like this. Invert that mask, and then let's just feather that out a lot. Just going to bring this up and up a bit like that. And maybe adjust that a tiny bit further. So it's like that. Now you're getting a nice little focus blur on basically the center of the composition. And that's looking nice. And another thing we're going to do is just add in another adjustment layer. And we're going to call this color correction. And we can add in a lumetri color. I'm going to just firstly bring down the saturation a good bit on this to maybe something like 60. Something like that. And then in our basic, we can increase the highlights and decrease the shadows a bit like that. And then just increase the contrast as well. Right, so that's giving us something that just looks a lot more cinematic. And yeah, that's looking good. Last thing we're going to do is add in one more adjustment layer here. And we're going to call this start blur. And on this, we're just going to add in a fast box blur again. And just increase this a lot. And let's just set a keyframe on our blur radius. And then maybe after 1 second, we can bring that back down to 0. So just at the start, it just all kind of reveals itself. And yeah, just feels a lot smoother. So that is basically the scene 1 fully done. And that's looking really good. Last thing, all I'm going to do is just make sure that our motion blur is on all these layers. And then I'm just going to add in a pixel motion blur on our actual main comp here. And yeah, you can adjust that how much you want. But that just makes everything feel a bit more cinematic. Right, so now into our scene 2. We can do a lot of stuff here just to make this look a bit nicer. So let's just make our comp to 10 seconds like that. What we can do is just extend this up more just so we can see that. Right, so now we are at a stage where we can start adding textures to this and yeah, really just building this out. So bring in some of our textures. So this is what I'm going to use, and I got it from Texture Labs. And now we can simply just make this 3D, and because we've that classic 3D, we can now come up to our mode and change this to a screen. Press play and you can kind of see what's going on here. What we can do is just make this a track matte of this first island that we cut out, and then just make sure that you re-enable this so it's still coming through. We can just invert this, and now we should be getting the details on the outside here, as you can see. Lovely. Now let's add some focus blurs onto this, and yeah, it's just gonna really take these planes and stuff and take them away from the background and just make it look a bit more cinematic. So what we can do is come up to our Eclipse tool, just make sure that nothing is connected, and have a black fill like this, and we can just hold shift, drag it out on where we basically want the viewer's attention to be. So I'm basically going to have it on these different planes like so, and you can even scale it down a bit, duplicate it like this. And also, because we're going to have text in the middle as well, I don't really want to have too much blur there, so I'm going to just have one in the middle as well, like that. We can select all these layers, right click, pre-compose, and let's just call this blur map. Come in, right click, new solid. Let's just bring in a white solid and bring it to the bottom. We can now add in a fast box blur and just increase that a good bit. Copy and then select all the other ones and paste it onto it. And now if we come back into our scene 2, you'll see you have something like this, and we can just hide that for now. Let's just give it a red color, and we're going to start adding in some adjustment layers. So in our first layer now, we're going to call this focus blur, and we can add in a camera lens blur and set the layer to the blur map. So now you'll see that some of these parts now are getting blurred, and then other parts that we've kind of selected aren't. Now let's animate some of those dust speckles, and we can do that by coming to our Texture Labs texture. Let's add in a displacement map, and let's set this displacement map to our blur map. And at the start, let's give a keyframe to our horizontal and vertical displacement, and then come on to like 10 seconds. And then we can just move these like this. And now you're getting something like that. And where these blurs hitting, you can kind of see the lines are kind of getting exaggerated, and trails are kind of forming. And that's just a really nice touch. Now we can add in some text if we wanted. So let's come up and add in some text, and let's maybe say make. We're just going to create one layer for now. Let's just bring it underneath our focus blur, and Control Alt and Home just to center it. Let's just position this somewhere and activate our 3D layer. So somewhere like that. And now I can just right click this, pre-compose, and call this text. Just reactivate the 3D on it and come back. And now we can just make this look a bit nicer. So I'm going to say make better maps. And let's just enable our transparency and right click layer styles, and let's add in a drop shadow. Come down and maybe let's increase the distance of it and the size, and let's add a tiny bit of noise. We can copy that layer style and just paste it to the other two. And now back in our scene 2, let's see how that's looking. That's looking good, and let's just position that somewhere where we want. And yeah, all I did then was just, you can use your rectangle tool and do some like lines underneath it, whatever way you want. So something like that, and we can just give it any color we want. Maybe let's rotate that a tiny bit, duplicate it one more time, do something like that, just so it's a bit of imperfections in it. Let's see how that's looking. Yeah, that's looking really good. So let's add in one more texture here, and it's going to just be this gray paper texture. And we can just simply bring this under our blur and also enable our blending mode to multiply. And we can add in levels here if you really just want to crunch this and pinch it, just so kind of see the effect that we're getting. And yeah, because that's underneath our blur map, you can see that only the places that are being affected by it. But you can also bring down the opacity a bit if you just don't want it too strong. Yeah, something like that is looking good. Right, so let's add in a final few touches, and we're going to add in another adjustment layer, and we can call this shake, and add in a transform on this. Just bring this above our focus blur, and let's just hold Alt and click our position. Add in a wiggle, maybe do something like 2 and 5. So we're getting something like this, just a subtle shake, and that's looking great. Last thing we can do is just come back to our main comp, and let's just add in a posterize time on our scene too, just because I feel like this is a tiny bit more gritty. Yeah, dropping the frame rate will just make this look nicer. Just to make this transition a bit smoother here, I'm just going to come up here, and on our start blur, we can duplicate this, and we can actually just call this end blur. Select these and just keyframe assistant, time, reverse layers, bring it to the end. So then when this zoom is happening, it's blurring out, and that should just make this transition a bit smoother. So then when you have all that done, you are done the tutorial, and you should have something that looks like this. Right, so that was the video for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, I hope you're going to use this technique in some of your upcoming videos. Leave me a comment below, let me know if there's anything else that you'd like to see on the channel, and I can try to get it done. But other than that, thanks for watching, and cheers.